I heard Bennett's school sister is about to die. Her only wish is to have a wedding with Bennett. The moment he agreed, I told the system, help me leave this world. Bennett urged me to divorce twice. I couldn't make it to the Civil Affairs Bureau as promised. Until I, as a terminally ill patient, lay on the operating table. He, the chief surgeon, was shocked and desperate. How could it be you? What made him even more devastated was, I would die at his hands according to the system settings, making him feel eternal guilt. Chapter 1. Bennett is a surgeon, recognized as the golden surgeon in the hospital. He is very busy. So busy that he only informed me of the divorce via WeChat. Find time to finalize the divorce. Renee's emotions are unstable, she can't wait. I looked at the cold dishes on the table, the edge of the cream cake melting. Like our relationship, from school uniforms to wedding dresses for a whole decade, collapsing in an instant. I made several phone calls, the fourth one finally connected. His voice was faint. What's up? I was busy just now. I subconsciously wanted to apologize, thinking he was in surgery. Doctors always have to be responsible for their patients. However, a playful woman's voice came through my ear. I've taken off all my clothes, hurry up and come. Blood rushed to my head instantly. Bennett, we haven't divorced yet, have we? He casually explained. You misunderstood, I was giving Renee's dog a bath. I closed my eyes, nails digging into my flesh. Bennett, if we divorce, I will disappear. That was the original setting of the system, no one could change it. He didn't say anything, there was the sound of movement on the other end. Probably changing to another place to take the call. He lowered his voice. Vivian, I've explained many times, it's just a formality. After satisfying her, we will remarry. Why do you always use disappearing to pressure me? Seeing I didn't respond, Bennett's breathing became heavier. Because he had said, he hated it most when I was silent and didn't respond. Vivian, be sensible. I smiled coldly. You stayed at Renee's house late at night to talk to me about being rational. Isn't that funny? After all, in the legal process, he is still my husband. There was a long sigh from the other end. Then, in a detached manner, word by word, he pierced my heart. Vivian, divorce on Friday morning. Chapter 2. I scooped some cream into my mouth, a hint of bitterness melting on my tongue. Ironically, he remembered to bathe Renee's dog but forgot today was my birthday. Perhaps his heart wasn't here anymore, and his memories had followed suit. System, can you sing a birthday song? No, I only know funeral songs. I chuckled. No need for that, save it for when I die. Help me leave this world. If I leave here, I can return to my original world. In my original world, although I didn't have a healthy body, I had family and friends who loved me. I missed the rice noodle rolls downstairs, the beef soup in the old street market. Of course, there was also the warm pot of congee my mom used to cook. Here, I only cook for Bennett. Because he's a doctor. His hands are crucial to his patients. But when I saw Renee's social media post, I couldn't hold back my emotions. His well-proportioned hands, the ones I had protected so well, casually peeling shrimp for her. The caption read, "The golden surgeon only peels shrimp for me." My past efforts seemed like a joke. Host, won't you try a bit harder? No. My heart was dead. Since he decided to divorce, the quest was destined to fail. The only difference was whether I'd die now or later. Why not free myself sooner? The system sighed lightly. Voluntary departure will be a bit painful. The good news is, you can choose a way to die. I thought carefully for a moment. Then smiled faintly. Since Bennett never believed I would disappear, then let me die in the hands of his golden surgery. I bet his expression would be quite something. Chapter 3. I couldn't make it to the Civil Affairs Bureau for the divorce on Friday as planned. After the disconnection program started, My body quickly showed signs of decay, with extremely low immunity. I had a fever. My lips dried up and cracked. Subconsciously, I shouted, "Bennett, water." In the past, as long as he was at home, I could always drink water at the right temperature. I liked it, and had gotten used to his pampering in small matters. But when I opened my eyes, I remembered that he had moved out long ago. On the day he agreed to marry Renee. She is the daughter of my mentor, so I have to take care of her for my mentor's sake. She's almost dead, it's just a wedding ceremony, be more generous. That day, I stared blankly at him. If it's just a ceremony, why bother getting a divorce certificate? He lowered his eyes, his fair and elegant face covered in a layer of frost. I can't let her be a mistress, can I? Yes, legally we weren't divorced, so wasn't she the mistress? Turns out he went all out in his act. I looked at him apathetically. Bennett, without a divorce, I will never remarry you. He paused for a second, dropped the suitcase in his hand. He tightly grabbed my arm. What did you say? If not me, then who will you be with? You said it yourself, in this world, you're an orphan, you have no one else but me. Maybe he hurt me with his grip. Tears couldn't help but swirl in my eyes. I clenched my fist and punched him. Let go, you jerk, you were the one who didn't want me first. But he held me tightly in his arms. Tears wet the collar of his white shirt. Vivian, don't cry, it hurts me to see you cry. How could I not want you? Helplessly, he wiped away my tears. From my forehead to my lips, he kissed me all the way. He said he was an orphan, and his mentor took care of him since he was young. He said Renee was just a sister. I believed him, after all, she had a rare and fatal illness, right? The system said restoring the marriage relationship within 3 months wouldn't be considered a failure. Until a week later, I went to the hospital to bring him some nutritious soup. Passing by the outdoor parking lot. Renee sat in the driver's seat, with the car windows wide open. He stood outside the window, hands in the pockets of his white coat, his figure broad and imposing. In the next moment, he bent down and kissed the sister in his mouth. I felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over my head. Numbly, I watched as he reached out his fair and slender fingers, affectionately rubbing her head. Be good, go home and rest. She seemed to say something coquettish, put on her sunglasses, and drove away. All of this felt so familiar. Wasn't this what he used to do to me before? He wanted to fulfill her marriage wish, and at that moment, I was filled with fear. Was it just out of pity and responsibility? Perhaps his heart had long wandered away? While not violating our vows of love, he reasonably wandered over to another girl. No wonder he was so eager to divorce and get married to her. That day, I threw the nutritious soup into the trash. Also, the heart that once liked him unreservedly was tossed in there as well. Chapter 4. In a feverish haze, the phone kept ringing. I struggled to reach for the phone and answer it. I could hear Bennett's slightly annoyed voice in my ear. Do you have any sense of time? I've been waiting for you for half an hour. Oh, I was delirious, forgetting that today was the day for the divorce. Weakly, I said, I have a fever, can we do this another day? With my body feeling so weak, how could I even get up? He chuckled lightly on the other end of the phone. Have you forgotten that I'm a doctor? With your robust physique, how could you possibly have a fever? You're 28, not a young girl like Renee, so stop acting childish. I couldn't help but laugh. You might not know, but that a young girl you're talking about is only 2 years younger than me. He used to call me a young girl as well. Maybe he's tired of it now. It doesn't matter to me anymore. I no longer have any expectations of him. Chapter 5. For the second divorce, I stood him up again. On the way out, something unexpected happened. At the intersection, a 2-year-old boy in a wheat-colored t-shirt ran out with his short legs, looking for his mother. The car coming around the corner lost control due to speeding. I didn't have time to think, and I pushed him forcefully into a safe area. With a bang, I felt like I was about to be shattered. The driver didn't stop for a second, stepping on the gas and speeding away. I turned to look, the license plate was very familiar. In a flash, I remembered the hospital parking lot, Renee's car. It was her. The boy was picked up by his frantic family, crying loudly in fear. Auntie is hurt. I only felt pain, the kind that feels like every organ in your body is being shattered. But there was no blood as expected. System, am I going to die? Not following the plan, a bit regretful. But being able to save a cute kid at the last moment, I felt no regrets about death. The system paused for a few seconds, then calmly replied. Congratulations, before the set death date, the host cannot die temporarily. Only on the day you break free, will the symptoms of the accident fully manifest. The system added in a slightly hesitant tone. This is a benefit I fought for you. I inexplicably found the system somewhat cute. I chuckled, great, then let Bennett see what his new wife did to me when he sees me next time. The boy's parents and grandmother surrounded me. The boy's mother, her eyes red, said. You saved the baby, you saved our whole family. They almost wanted to kneel down to me. I kept saying I was fine, but they still warmly helped me into the car and drove me to the hospital. How can you be fine? The car bumper is completely dented in. Are people harder than cars? Helpless, I had to inform Bennett in advance. I was in a car accident, let's reschedule. Chapter 6. I just didn't expect that the hospital where they brought me was Bennett's. I'll take a look at the test results. A familiar voice sounded above me. Bennett rushed in like the wind, with a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. Like he had just rushed back from outside. The other doctor patted his shoulder. Dr. Pierce, don't worry, everything is fine. Until the set death date by the system. No instrument could detect any issues with my body. Bennett carefully read through each paper report. When he looked up again, there was a hint of unfamiliar sharpness in his eyes. No external or internal injuries, so what kind of accident is this, Vivian? Vivian, you've stood me up twice now, what's going on? I crossed my arms. I got into a car accident. Oh, right, it was your new wife who hit me and fled the scene. Without hesitation, he furrowed his brow in rebuttal. That's impossible. Renee is very innocent, she wouldn't do such a thing. So, what you're implying is that I'm not innocent, that I lie? After saying that, we both froze. A hint of unease flickered in his eyes. Because he also realized that he trusted Renee more than he trusted me. In my mind, I asked the system. Will she be caught? The system unequivocally replied. Yes, this world is still a society governed by law. Oh, in that case, I can rest easy. Let her innocence be judged by the law. If it weren't for the system saving my life, with such a huge impact, I should have died long ago. She is a hit-and-run offender. I looked at my watch. Bennett, let's go, let's head to the Civil Affairs Bureau now. Otherwise, I won't have time. His hands in his pockets, he spoke casually. No time for what? About to die. 3 days later, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I had asked the system. Is there anything special about this time? 10 years ago, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, was the time you both met. Oh, from beginning to end. Bennett glanced indifferently out the window and his tone was somewhat impatient. Vivian, why don't you go see a psychiatrist? I chuckled in exasperation. Bennett, the one who needs help is you, always asking for everything. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. Haven't been eating properly lately? You've lost weight. I don't need you to worry about it. Have a meal first, Vivian. I was about to refuse when his phone vibrated. I saw the screen, it was Renee. Bennett subconsciously let go of my hand. She was crying on the phone, saying she had a nightmare and was scared. Bennett comforted her softly for a few moments. He glanced at me and told her. Yes, I'll be back soon. As he ended the call, a hint of hesitation flickered in his eyes. "Vivian, you go ahead and eat first." In my mind, I sneered. Is she having a nightmare? Feeling guilty for hitting someone, perhaps. Great. Because Bennett chose her once again, he missed out on our final meal together. Will he regret it later when he thinks back on it? Chapter 7. The final countdown of life. I lay on the cold operating table. The excruciating pain of my internal organs being crushed surged through me in waves. It's okay, endure a little longer. Soon, I'll be able to go back and drink the congee my mother cooks. Bennett's voice, full of anger, still echoed in my ears. Vivian, do you really think I have no temper? Renee is dying, can you be a bit more generous? Because of my third cancellation. But I had told him before, I have no time left, I'm dying. He just didn't believe it. 10 minutes later, Bennett, dressed in surgical attire, entered the operating room expressionlessly. Originally, this surgery wasn't meant for him. But the system had set it up so that no matter who started it, he would finish it. System, what is my terminal illness? Tumor surgery, Bennett's specialty. Why does the system sound a bit gleeful? The anesthesia has been administered. Bennett is ready. His assistant couldn't help but ask softly. Dr. Pierce, are you okay? The assistant knew about my situation. They had even secretly admired him. Dr. Pierce's skills are truly remarkable. Those who can operate on their wives are ruthless. And Bennett himself, for the time being, had not realized anything. Lying on the surgical drapes was his wife, who he angrily scolded just over an hour ago. He took the surgical knife handed by the assistant. Skillfully, he made a 16-centimeter incision on my abdomen. This tumor surgery was not particularly different from the surgeries he had performed before. Even if it failed, it would still be within reasonable boundaries. After all, the surgery difficulty level was high, with an extremely low success rate. But thanks to years of professional experience, the surgery was still within his control. However, the word accident is the most unpredictable thing for humans. For example, Bennett unexpectedly discovered a faint pink scar next to the incision on the skin. His hand suddenly paused in midair. The assistants were all a bit surprised. This was an unprecedented situation. Especially with the patient's skin already cut open. Dr. Pierce was in a daze. In the entire room, only I knew why. Chapter 8. That scar, Bennett was more familiar with it than anyone. On many affectionate nights, he had touched and kissed it. Vivian, this is your scar, but it's a mark for me for a lifetime. Because it was the scar left by the knife I blocked for him. While he was in residency, I brought him meals. During a failed surgery, a patient who lost control was waving a fruit knife around. At that time, he was just a young doctor starting out, and it had nothing to do with him. As he was helping another innocent patient who had fallen. The knife cut towards his abdomen. Be careful. I pushed him away, and the knife stabbed into my lower abdomen in the chaos. Bennett immediately covered my wound. Blood flowed from between his fingers, drenching his hands. His face was pale as paper. He picked me up and rushed to the emergency room. It wasn't until my wound was treated that his empty eyes regained a bit of light. With tears in his eyes, he looked at me and buried his head in my neck. Vivian, seeing you bleed, it hurts me so much, it's better if I had died instead. I patted him with a smile, then will you be nicer to me in the future? He kissed my earlobe. I'd give my life for you. That day, he held me, carefully avoiding my wound. With utmost seriousness, he said. Vivian, you are too kind. Please, think more about yourself in the future. The person who used to tell me to think more about myself was him. And now, the person telling me to be more forgiving towards Renee is also him. The assistant quietly reminded. Dr. Pierce, is something wrong? Bennett ignored it and took a few quick steps. Suddenly, he pulled back the surgical drape covering my face. His pupils contracted in an instant. His face was filled with shock and despair. How could it be you? But at this moment, I couldn't respond to him. I was under anesthesia, closing my eyes heavily. My face was pale, with cold sweat beading on my forehead. We were at the final stage of the peeling procedure. It really hurt, but it was quick, it was almost over. Bennett's Adam's apple rolled a few times, his voice trembling in an unrecognizable manner. Vivian, you can't have any issues, I won't let anything happen to you. He wanted to touch me but refrained, fearing bacterial infection. The assistants were somewhat surprised. Did Dr. Pierce not realize that it was his own wife under the surgical knife? But their professionalism quickly brought them back to focus. Their attention returned to the operating table. The system in my mind coolly remarked. This is probably one of Bennett's most agonizing surgeries. After all, the success rate of this surgery was only 5%. Anyone would be nervous in this situation, right? When he picked up the scalpel again, his fingers trembled slightly. But soon, he managed to restrain the tremor with astonishing willpower. Years of professionalism had prepared him for this moment. The surgery continued smoothly. Continue with the anesthesia. The tumor shows signs of spreading, partial detachment, and symptoms of severe bleeding. Use interventional embolization to block the blood vessels. Continue with the adhesion peeling, excise the diseased area. Bennett truly lived up to his reputation as the most renowned and youngest surgical virtuoso in the hospital. As he had claimed, he was in control. The assistant's slightly excited voice came through. It's a success. They whispered in celebration. But I wasn't surprised at all. The surgery was temporarily deemed successful. Because my departure time limit had not yet arrived. Only 2 hours remained. Chapter 9. After the surgery, according to protocol, I needed to stay in the observation room for an hour. To ensure all my vital signs were stable. Bennett regained his calm and composed demeanor. The entire space was just him and me. Apart from a brief conversation during the outpatient visit after the car accident. We haven't spent more than an hour together in a long time. He whispered softly in my ear. I never thought these hands would be used to operate on Vivian one day. The anesthesia was wearing off quickly for me. It was all thanks to the system settings. I opened my eyes and mocked him. I never thought your hands would be used to peel crayfish for someone else. In this world, just like him, I'm an orphan. We both earned our tuition bit by bit. I remember when we had just graduated. We were so broke, we couldn't even afford a washing machine. The damp, bone-chilling cold of the southern winter. Each time we did laundry, our fingers turned red from the cold, and I couldn't bear to let him do it even once. You don't belong here, your hands are meant for holding surgical knives, saving more lives and families. Vivian, do you have a filter for doctors? Yes. In my previous world, my life was saved by a doctor too. All right, I will definitely not disappoint Vivian's preferences. You could hear a pin drop in the room. My remark seemed to catch Bennett off guard. After a while, he sighed softly. Vivian, Renee is dying soon, can you not hold it against her? I chuckled. I'm dying soon too, why can't I hold it against her? Bennett's eyes darkened for a moment. You're not going to die, don't you trust my skills? Perhaps realizing that I was a patient now too. His voice softened a bit. When did you get this illness? You said you wanted a divorce, don't believe I would disappear that day. I caught him off guard again, so he had to change the subject. I know you care about beauty, the incision is stitched up beautifully, the scar will be light. I didn't respond. The silence in the air made him uncomfortable for a moment. He wanted to say something more. A nurse came in. Dr. Pierce, your phone has been ringing continuously. Vivian, I need to take this call. After a while, when Bennett returned, he seemed somewhat uneasy. Vivian, I have an urgent matter to attend to, I'll make sure the nurse takes good care of you. Of course, I knew exactly where he was going. His original plan was to divorce me this morning. In the afternoon, he held a lawn wedding with Renee. Dr. Pierce, truly a master of time management, quite busy indeed. Bennett, in this world, I have less than 2 hours left. Are you sure you don't want to say goodbye to me? Actually, I didn't want to spend much more time with him either. If he stays, let's consider it his last bit of sincerity towards our years of relationship and marriage. Then I will appropriately reciprocate, to lessen his guilt a little bit. But he doesn't want that. Bennett stood up. Even after experiencing 3 hours of intense surgery, he was still full of spirit and elegant. The kind of uncontrollable emotions he had when he found out the patient was me in the surgery room had completely disappeared. Vivian, after you've recovered, I will personally arrange for you to see a psychiatrist. That calm and non-negotiable tone. To be honest, I didn't quite like it. I chuckled coldly. Dr. Pierce, I hope you don't regret this. Bennett remained composed, as if he saw through my act. He glanced at me, lips curling into a slight smile. I won't. Vivian, what you need now is to rest well. With that, he disappeared through the door. Because his phone in his pocket had been reminding him several times. At this moment, his wedding venue should be bustling with guests. Renee must be getting impatient. I felt relieved. Bennett, this was your own choice. Chapter 10. After Bennett left, the system sighed in my mind. He missed his last chance. I was surprised that the system could show regretful emotions. Host, you are a kind and good girl, so I selfishly fought for you to have a chance to live well in this world. If he had chosen you today, the surgery would have been a success in reality. I laughed. System, did you forget? Even if he stayed today, I still wouldn't survive. Because Renee already hit me and caused my death. The system fell silent for a moment. Yes, I know. Host, do you want to know why Renee was speeding that day? Because she was in a hurry to go to the airport to pick up Bennett. Yes, that day was the day Bennett returned from his business trip. In a hurry to pick him up. Because Bennett was rushing to divorce me. The karmic relationship between us. I sighed softly. Even if I hadn't been in the accident, even if the surgery was very successful, I wouldn't want him anymore. You don't love him anymore? The system witnessed our 10 years together. Yes. Why? The system asked further. Aren't you the system? How could you not know? Cough, the system is not omnipotent, occasionally there are oversights. I smiled. Renee's family doesn't have a dog. That's what Bennett told me before. His mentor and junior sister are both allergic to animal fur. How can a family with allergies to animal fur have a dog? The system was stunned for a while. So that night, they couldn't possibly be giving the dog a bath? That message on the phone. Clothes are off, come quickly. It's already enough to explain everything. He had drifted away from both body and heart. Still calmly deceiving me. System, he's filthy, I can't have him anymore. The system rarely cursed. Darn, that scumbag, let him be tormented by guilt. Chapter 11. Oh no. The patient is bleeding heavily, tissue infection. Dr. Pierce's surgery has significant complications. Heart stopped, switch to ECMO, get ready. How could the patient's heart, liver, spleen, and lungs rupture? In fact, I had already detached. My soul hovered above, watching my life slowly fade away. Why can't we reach Dr. Pierce on the phone? One call went through, then got disconnected. I asked the system. Do you know who disconnected it? Oh, this is getting interesting, it was Renee. The system seemed to be enjoying the drama. Come on, host, let's go crash the wedding. System, you're getting cuter and cuter. Before leaving, I took a look at myself on the operating table. The wounds from the accident were all visible now. It's really serious, isn't it? My whole body was shattered, with my left arm and leg showing strange twists. Probably broken upon impact. How pitiful. Luckily, I pushed away that little boy. He was so cute, so adorable, thankfully he was unharmed. Chapter 12. It's quite interesting to watch other people's weddings. Mounds of flowers, colorful balloons floating around. It looks like happiness. But it's all stolen. System, the cake on the long table looks delicious. Host, you seem a bit happy? Do I need to remind you this is your husband's wedding? I wrinkled my nose. Because I can go home soon, of course I'm happy. As for Bennett, he couldn't affect my emotions anymore. I discovered that when he was drifting away, I've been depressed, unwilling to accept it. I even doubted myself. I spent nights losing clumps of hair. Closing my eyes, replaying in my mind, him holding hands with her, laughing as they kissed, even embracing each other in bed. The world I once guarded collapsed from that moment. Later, I realized such behavior was foolish. You can't punish yourself by holding on to a man who's moved on. What you need to do is strive to find opportunities to live in the sunlight. Host, look, scumbag. Bennett, in his black suit, appeared at the other end of the lawn. Elegant and distinguished. The bride, well, she looked beautiful, with tasteful and elegant makeup. At least there was no hint of panic from 3 days ago when they hit someone. I slowly floated over to Bennett. I overheard him softly asking Renee, "Where's my phone?" Renee's eyes flickered. "In the dressing room, I kept it for you." A phone stuffed into a finely tailored groom's suit was indeed unsightly. "Do you have my number?" "There seems to be one." Renee hesitated. "Do you want to go get it?" "But the wedding is about to start." Bennett paused. "No need." He gazed calmly ahead. I wonder if he remembered our wedding back then. We were so poor we could only afford silver rings, but we were happy. "Vivian, do you regret marrying this poor guy?" "No, Dr. Pierce is a promising stock." Indeed, later on, he had the ability to buy me a big diamond ring. But I didn't have the same happiness as before. "Vivian, a junior is critically ill, can I fulfill her wish?" "She's only 26, so pitiful, Bennett, you should go." "Vivian, her wish is to marry me." I froze. "Bennett, this wish is unreasonable." "But she's dying." "Even if she's dying, you can't force someone else's husband, someone else's feelings." "Bennett, this wish is an unethical wish." That day, he stood on the balcony smoking for a long time. Finally, he flicked the ashes, and said in an icy tone, "Vivian, you've changed, not as kind as before." The silence filled the room in the end. "Bennett, have you forgotten I fear loneliness the most?" Sitting in the empty living room, turning on all the lights one by one, I still felt something was missing. Finally, burying my face in my arms, curling up. "It's not me who changed. Bennett, it's you who changed." When he was with Renee, I called him. "My stomach hurts. Bennett, my stomach hurts." That day he was with Renee at the top of the Ferris wheel. It was rumored that kissing there symbolized love and eternity. But I didn't have a stomach ache, I was just standing below the Ferris wheel, watching them sit intimately together. I was heartbroken. Bennett naturally knew about my body. His tone on the phone was indifferent, cold. "Vivian, I'm a surgeon, not a gastroenterologist." At that moment, I felt like I was dying from the discomfort. When the other person can't tolerate your occasional tantrums, that's probably falling out of love. Love and not loving have always been clear. Chapter 13. System, is it almost time for the ring exchange segment? That diamond ring is so dazzling, must have cost quite a bit, right? The system was almost laughing at me. "Host, shouldn't you be concerned about when the police will arrive? What's the rush? Let them be happy a little longer. This way, when the truth comes out, it will hurt even more." Renee looked shyly at Bennett. "Senior, I've actually liked you for a long time. Today, this wish finally comes true." Bennett's expression seemed somewhat unnatural. His eyes dropped, slightly distracted. Perhaps he remembered our wedding back then. He said this to me too. Vivian, marrying you, this wish finally comes true. Ironically, today he left me in the hospital to fulfill someone else's wish. He probably had just taken off our wedding rings not long ago. There were still faint ring marks on his ring finger. But not on mine. That precious engagement ring I once treasured. The day he agreed to marry Renee, I threw it in the trash and never wanted it again. Now, Bennett picked up the beautiful diamond ring, ready to put it on Renee. Suddenly, a few officers in uniform burst in at the entrance. The system's voice sounded slightly excited. "Oh, the show is starting. Do you need some sunflower seeds?" Cough, "Host, have you forgotten? I'm working right now." I almost burst out laughing at the system. "Renee, there's a report from the public about you hit and running." Renee's lips trembled uncontrollably, like a drowning person, gripping Bennett's arm tightly. "I didn't. The police were used to tough talkers. Matter-of-factly, they said. Surveillance footage shows that on the 11th of this month at 2:10 p.m., the car you were driving, license plate XXX, hit a person on Wanghai Road due to speeding and then fled. The victim was a young woman." At this point, I saw Bennett's fingers tremble slightly. He's so smart, he should be able to figure out that at that time on that day, Renee was supposed to pick him up. Bennett's face turned ugly as he pulled his arm back, taking 2 steps back. He stared harshly at Renee. "You changed cars to pick me up that day, was it because your original car hit someone?" Renee was shaking uncontrollably. He couldn't help but grab her neck fiercely. "Did you hit Vivian?" Renee spoke incoherently. "It hurts, let go, I don't know, it's impossible, there's no surveillance there." The police calmly told her, "There is surveillance, it was just installed the day before." Renee's body swayed forward slightly. "Ma'am, one more thing to inform you, you are suspected of purchasing forged medical records and need to cooperate with the investigation." Renee's face turned ashen in an instant, even the strength to argue was gone. Finally, she slumped like mud and was taken away by the police. What awaits her will be the punishment of the law. The guests in the crowd began to murmur. "She's really disgraced herself, getting arrested on her wedding day. She always seemed cute and innocent, but hitting someone and fleeing? That's cold-hearted. So she wasn't actually sick? Buying fake medical records to feign illness, deceiving our tears? That's lacking in integrity. Isn't the groom a skilled doctor? Didn't he notice anything?" Bennett couldn't have not heard. At this moment, he looked like he had been slapped hard. "Host, Bennett really didn't notice?" I chuckled. Perhaps, he just didn't want to notice. He wanted to be the dragon-slaying hero who saves the princess. But he didn't realize he was the dragon. The system indignantly said. "Ugh, what a new species of scum." Chapter 14. Bennett grabbed the phone from the dressing room. Unfortunately, the phone was dead, the screen black. He then turned and quickly ran towards the parking lot. Running too fast, he even stumbled along the way. He pressed the gas pedal towards the direction of the hospital. Host, it seems like he ran several red lights. Well, then let's wait for his driver's license to be revoked. He pursed his lips, not even having time to change out of his groom attire, rushing all the way to the hospital. Where's Vivian? Where is Vivian? The nurses were all frightened by his frantic appearance. Dr. Pierce, there's no Vivian here. How could there not be? Have you all done your job properly? Luckily, his assistant stopped him in time. Whispering, she spoke. Bennett, there really is no Vivian here. Bennett, usually emotionally stable at work, was now losing his composure and grace. What the hell, then where is she? She's in the morgue. Bennett staggered for a moment, grabbing his assistant's collar. No, she was fine just now. The surgery was very successful, what are you talking about? Chapter 15. On the way to the morgue. With every word his assistant said, Bennett's face grew paler. Her organs looked like they had been crushed by gravity. It's as if she was in a serious car accident. He muttered to himself. It can't be, the surgery was successful. The assistant had to tell him the actual situation. Bennett, the area you sutured, it all ruptured, her intestines. Her intestines spilled out. Bennett's legs felt like they were filled with lead, almost unable to move. And her tumor spread, invading the surrounding tissues. It felt like a heavy hammer, hitting him in the heart. This statement meant his surgery had failed. The golden hands had failed completely. He had performed countless surgeries, but only the tumor surgery on his own wife had failed. This was a devastating blow to his confidence. Bennett swallowed hard a few times. When? Did she pass away? An hour after you left the hospital. What was he doing at that time? Attending a wedding. His wedding with Renee. Amidst the joy of flowers and balloons, his wife was entering the final phase of her life. Chapter 16. Bennett hesitated several times to lift my white cloth. His hands trembling like he had Parkinson's. Just lift it already. Lift the system process and it will end. Then I can go home and drink the porridge my mom cooked. Bennett finally closed his eyes and lifted it open. I also saw my own body. Well, my face is still recognizable, but my body is broken beyond recognition. The system sighed beside him. At first, Bennett calmly looked at my body. Then he gently touched my face as if in a tender manner. Finally, he lifted my hand and placed it near his lips. Vivian, wake up, let's go home. We're not getting divorced, never again, okay? The room fell silent, no one answered him. The assistant stood somewhat helplessly on the side, a bit unsure. Bennett held onto my body and didn't let go. Gradually, he began to lose his mind. Vivian, damn it, answer me. Get up, let's go home, okay? Please. Vivian, I'm really begging you. Tears dripped onto my neck one by one. I didn't like this. System, will he dirty my body like this? Host, it's almost over, endure a little longer. How much longer? At midnight, you can return to your original world. Okay, just endure a few more hours. The body cannot be taken home. Bennett was advised by the hospital leader to go home. A skilled surgeon squatting in the morgue going crazy really didn't look good. You have to take care of her funeral arrangements, right? Bennett kissed my forehead several times. I frowned at that. Even the system couldn't help but mutter softly, nonsense. After repeated urging from colleagues, Bennett numbly walked out of the morgue. He calmly asked the assistant beside him. Did Vivian say anything before she left? She did. Bennett's eyes lit up for a moment. She said, wish you a happy marriage and goodbye, forever. Ah. Bennett, what's wrong with you? Bennett fell heavily to the ground. His knees hit the floor with a loud noise. He seemed to forget the pain and quickly got up. Limping, he walked out. I want to go home, Vivian said she has a stomach ache. Chapter 17. He used the key to open our former home. It was pitch black, only the lights from outside were on. He seemed unsure of where even the living room light switch was. Because usually when he came home, the lights were on. I would wait for him on the couch. He shouted, Vivian. Of course, there was no response. A loud noise came from the room. Bennett quickly rushed to the bedroom. A few seconds later, as if all his strength had been drained. Of course, the bedroom was empty. It was just the sound of a picture frame falling to the floor. Under the bright fluorescent light, he stood there in a daze for a while. The whole house was empty, like a model room that had never been lived in. Host, you did a great job. I won't leave him any chance to reminisce. That's right, I threw away or donated everything that belonged to me. In the picture frame, only his half-portrait remained. Even the wedding photo was only half there, his half-face portrait lying tattered on the floor. Finally, he slid down the wall weakly. With his hands on his head, just like when I first found out about his affair. crouched in one place. Incredulous, yet unwilling to accept it. 10 years, not 10 days. At first, he just sobbed softly. Then he began to wail loudly. Vivian, I was wrong, I truly was wrong. Come back, please? Please come back. He probably forgot that he once said. Is it manly for a man to cry? Now, he doesn't seem manly at all. A white light flashed. Host, goodbye. I knew it was time to go home. Host, will you forget me? No, System, you're so cute. System, thank you for accompanying me on this unique journey. Goodbye. Goodbye. I'm going home now.
Extra Chapter. Chapter 1. It had been a long time since Bennett had been on the operating table. He had a stress reaction. As soon as he was on the operating table, it was as if he saw Vivian lying there. Subconsciously, he wanted to escape. Dr. Pierce, are we really going to perform this surgery today? Yes. Bennett nodded to his assistant. Vivian likes me as a doctor, how can I be a doctor if I don't perform surgeries? He joked a bit, then put on his surgical gown. Administer anesthesia. Make a 15-centimeter incision. At first, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Until, the patient's blood gushed out in large quantities. Bennett began to have difficulty breathing. Cold sweat ran down his temples. Memories kept flashing back, Vivian lying on the operating table, Vivian lying in the morgue. Blood, so much blood, the blood during surgery, the blood Vivian shed for him years ago. Bennett, will you treat me better in the future? Of course, I give my life for you. The scene shifted, Vivian pleading with him helplessly. Bennett, after the divorce, I will disappear. Bennett, stop pressuring me with your threats of disappearing. Bennett, you should see a psychiatrist. Bennett, you should see a psychiatrist, I'll arrange it. Bennett, you're the one who's sick. Yes, he was truly sick. They had finally built a home together. The warm little home with a small light waiting for him every day to return. A little home that provided a place for his lonely soul to reside for many years. Why didn't he cherish it properly? Perhaps the comfortable days had gone on for too long and had become a bit dull. The pressure of performing surgeries every day, the pressure of his reputation, he needed an outlet. Renee happened to come into his life. She admired him, clung to him, and couldn't be driven away. To him, she was a completely different, lively individual compared to Vivian. Countless times sitting in the car alone, smoking. He kept thinking, let's just indulge this once. Indulge once, and he'll be back by Vivian's side. He was a doctor, how could he not notice Renee's condition? She provided a report, and he believed it. Life is hard to understand. He chased after Vivian for a divorce. As long as he got divorced, the deep-rooted moral fear in his heart would weaken. He just couldn't accept that in Vivian's eyes, he was equating himself with infidelity. His actions were like robbing Peter to pay Paul. More like walking on a tightrope with each step. Finally, falling into the abyss, shattered to pieces. That home. The home with Vivian, he could never return to it again. Dr. Pierce, what's wrong with Dr. Pierce? Dr. Pierce, the patient is hemorrhaging heavily. It's spreading, not good, it's affecting the surrounding tissues. Later, colleagues in the hospital would gossip during their breaks. Perhaps as a warning. That surgery was a complete failure. The lead surgeon left midway, causing irreparable harm to the patient. The lead surgeon was sentenced to 3 years in prison. After Vivian left, Bennett was no longer the golden-handed surgeon. He couldn't even be a doctor anymore. The doctor Vivian loved the most. Chapter 2. When Bennett was released from prison, it was the Qingming festival. I want that bouquet, the lilies my wife loved. Vivian's grave was very clean. It seemed like someone visited it frequently. The smiling photo on the tombstone made his heart tremble. Vivian was still very young, but these 3 years felt like 30, full of hardships. Just as he was about to reach out to touch the photo, he heard the voice of a 6 or 7-year-old boy behind him. "Don't touch, don't touch. You're not allowed to pay respects to my godmother." He was the little boy Vivian had once saved. You leave, you leave. You marry a new wife, causing the death of my godmother. You're not welcome here." Bennett smiled bitterly. He never expected Vivian to be so ruthless, not even allowing him to take care of things after her passing. He had entrusted everything to the little boy's family. Bennett walked out of the cemetery feeling desolate. Looking up at the gray sky, he felt like the sky was about to cry. "It's raining, run!" With a loud rumble, a torrential rain poured down. It felt like he was back in that summer years ago. He was in graduate school, and Vivian was still an undergraduate. "Senior, don't get wet in the rain, I have an umbrella." Vivian playfully entered his long lonely world like this. By the time they reached the dormitory downstairs, her shoulder was soaked. While he remained dry, he felt ashamed because, due to his height, he had overlooked the petite girl. She smiled, her eyes crescent-shaped. "It's okay, Senior, I'm healthy." She was so kind. How could he bring himself to scold her, to ask her to be more forgiving? The guilt sprouted like a green shoot, growing into a dense vine within him. With a plop, Bennett fell in the rain. Bright red blood snaked along with the rainwater, pooling on the ground. The knife that Vivian had blocked many years ago. It had come back to him. This time, there was no one to block the knife for him. He knew the person who stabbed him. It was the relative of the patient from that final failed surgery. He deserved to die. He ran away midway through the operation, causing the death of someone's beloved family member. Those who betray trust don't end up well, do they? Like him, Bennett. "Vivian, will you come to take me away?" Apart from the sound of rain, no one answered him. Chapter 3. After his death, he encountered the system. He begged for a long time before the system agreed to show him Vivian. "This is because you were once a doctor, saving many patients." On a leisurely evening, Vivian was dozing off on a rattan chair at the doorstep. Her mother called from inside the house. "What's Vivian having for dinner tonight?" "Claypot congee, salt and pepper baby potatoes, must have baby potatoes." "I know, it's your favorite." Bennett's guilt started sprouting again. Because he didn't like eating potatoes. It turned out that Vivian had been accommodating him for 10 years. He couldn't touch her, watching her happily stand up from the rattan chair and run outside. "Hey, kid, you stole lemons from my yard again. I'll make you regret it." "Sis, I'll make lemon tea for you, want some?" "Yes." Bennett only then noticed that one of Vivian's legs was healthy, while the other was fitted with a prosthetic limb. "Sis, you only have one leg, how can you run so fast?" "Because I'm an alien with a bionic leg." She was very optimistic, just like the Vivian he knew. No wonder she loved running and exercising so much. It was because of her physical disability. But still, she remained so optimistic, so joyful. Surrounded by love. Loved by many, and loving many in return. Her mother, best friend, friends, the little boy she saved, even the cold system, she loved them all. Except him. She no longer wanted him. Bennett suddenly realized, with a sense of desolation, that even in death, he was so lonely. The news from his world was being broadcast. Former Golden surgeon Dr. Pierce found dead outside his late wife's tomb, with no one to claim the body.